Hello, good morning. This is Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Ansari, Department of Political Science, AMU, Aligarh. So far, we have been talking about the origin of state. And in origin of state, we are discussing the liberal theories. And in liberal theories, we are on to the evolutionary origin of state. And in this regard, in my previous presentation, I talked about some of the factors. And today, we are going to talk about the other factors which had been responsible for the evolutionary image of or evolutionary history of the state itself. Now, the sword has played an important role in the evolution of the state in the form of war or force, and the image of blood-stained sword of warriors, they have played important role in the evolution of the state. Big empires, they originated, developed with the help of force and wars. The use of forces and wars have made innumerable changes in the political map of the world from the ancient time to the present. Now, some people have natural tendency to leadership and subordination. A few people, they are rulers, they establish their hegemony over others by their sound organizational abilities and application of force. Jenks writes, in the formation of modern states, the conspicuous immediate causes are closely related facts of immigration and conquests. Now, if you look at the primitive society, the family, clan, and other groups, they became tribes. And it was more of a political organization as it gave birth to tribal states. Now, within the tribal states, inner conflicts and open use of force between tribal states, it gave birth to larger states, and further use of force and wars among these larger states that gave birth to empires. Now, with the weakening of kinship and religious bonds, that had been one of the factors or a couple of factors in the origin of state, they, after it weakened, it necessitated some kind of maintaining unity or law and order or peace or seeking obedience from masses towards the law. Now, because of that, the coercive force was exercised by the leaders who tried to maintain the sovereignty of the state. Now, but mere force, however superior it might be, cannot become a state. So McIver writes, we cannot say when and where the state begins. It is implicit in the universal tendency to leadership and subordination. But it only emerges when authority becomes government and customs is translated into law. Now, if you look at the Athenian society in the ancient Greek civilization, we find the Macedonian and Romans, they built their empire on the basis of force. McIver writes, conquest and domination was a pathway of the extended state. Ancient city-states created military order with professional officers, organized on the basis of a rigorous system of subordination. Building of empires had an economic motive. And further he writes, the motive of imperial expansion is and always has been predominantly an economic one. So Athenians built its empire through war. Macedonia's King Philip became emperor, and his son Alexander the Great thought of world empire and waged many victorious wars. During Roman period, the army was further developed. Great generals like Marius, Sulla, Caesar, Augustus, they laid the foundation of Roman Empire with the power of their swords and an army of soldiers. Here, McIver further states that the soldiers of the new order depended on his pay and on those spoils. His only home was the camp, his only signs, war, and his only hope, the journal of the army. So the political power was becoming a naked force. Thus, during the Roman period, because of force and war, bureaucratic and despotic Roman Empire was founded with certain very modernistic ideas like citizenship, concentration of authority plus uniformity of law, centralized organization, military power, etc. Now, similarly, in the modern period, we find the same naked force and war being used in consolidation of the state. Force played and is playing an important role in the establishment of democracies as against monarchies in the early period. So force is still an important element in national and international politics, and the present century has already witnessed two world wars. So MacIver is of the opinion, who is the propounder of this evolutionary theory, that the state has not originated because of force or war, but it has originated to serve some functions in society. He writes of the two aspects of the state, power and service. It is nearly always the former which determines the first instance its extension, whereas the service part, it determines its intention, that is, its inner development. So MacIver also denies that naked force has been the most important thing in the expansion and maintenance of state. He further states that nor can it be maintained that the expansion of the modern state was due mainly to the use of force. Expansion has been mainly the result of constructive energy, not of destructive force, and that welfare state and welfare state force does not have a major role to play in its construction. Now, in spite of MacIver's doubt about the role of force in the evolution of state, it cannot be denied that the force has been one of the major factors in the origin, growth, expansion, and maintenance of state. So when kinship was unable to keep society in bounds and religion became quite ineffective as a measure of political control, then force provided the material basis to the state. More specifically, when one privileged class would have emerged, it would have been challenged by the underprivileged or unprivileged class, and then the state would have been established by the privileged class to safeguard their interest and dominate over the underprivileged or unprivileged class. Now, Marxism has maintained this theory as the basis of origin of state, but the liberal theories, they also support this position to some extent. And MacIver says the state becomes the embodiment of power, but only in proportion as it becomes the instrument of a class, only as it is identified with a privileged order. Moving on to next factor and very important factor which determines the origin of the state and its evolution, and that is political consciousness. Now, if someone is given a question, what is preferable, best anarchy or worst state? I'm sure the question will be the worst state. Now, the reason for that is that the state, at least it will provide some security. So security has been an important requirement. And as the state can provide it, people have given their support to state because of this very purpose which it serves. The will of the people to obey, which is there because the people are politically conscious of the utility of the state, has been an important factor in the evolution of state. Laws of the state were given recognition by the people because it serves a purpose, and they respect the lawgivers and have faith in the rationality of the state. So political consciousness brings about that consciousness of utility that a state provides. It provides a psychological basis to the stability of the state and its sustenance. So by preparing the people to obey the laws and commands of the state voluntarily, this political consciousness has played a leading role. Thus, the psychological or ideological basis provided by the state with legitimacy and stability. Democracy developed due to this very political consciousness of the people, and welfare state originated because of this factor. Political consciousness means that people felt the need of state, found it to be an institution of utility, gave respect to it, and thought that the state or political organization can provide them with security, help them in moral and social economic development, and that will protect their life and property, maintain their rights and liberties, and protect them from external aggression. The idea of citizenship and later on nationalism filled the people with patriotism, and they felt as if they were associated with national state in an inseparable way, and they gladly sacrificed themselves, singing "Watan ki raah pe, Watan ki raah pe, Watan ke naujawan shaheed hon." So, youth of the nation, sacrifice yourselves for the sake of the nation. So, it is, however, difficult to say whether political consciousness helped in the origin of the state or the state helped in the development of political consciousness. Either way, it seems the consciousness is something the state which helped in evolving. So the second proposition is nearer to the truth, and the state after its origin formed its own ideological basis by creating political consciousness. Now, this political consciousness generated or created by the state is considered by Karl Marx as false consciousness to suit their own purpose. That is, the dominant class, it creates its own consciousness to maintain its hold over the society. So the rulers of society, they are in a better position to influence the ideas of the people. However, it cannot be denied that political consciousness has been the most important vehicle of political change. It may not have helped in the origin of the state, but it has surely helped in bringing about the changes in the social and political order. So political consciousness on the one hand has been the stable basis of the state, and on the other hand, it has been used as career of revolutions by revolutionaries. Now, another factor which has contributed in the evolution of state is urbanization. Now, urbanization is something with the development of socio-political system. Small village communities, they start gathering in towns and big cities in the hope of better opportunities. So, growth of surplus wealth in a few hands, it gave birth to cities, and McIver writes that as the surplus wealth grew, there arose cities, small and great. For the city is the focus and the sign of mobilizable wealth. With the origin of cities, trade, commerce, industries, navigation that also developed. So it gave a new unity, new life, and a new image to society in which family bonds were replaced by city bonds. McIver further states that in fact the family, once a community, is transformed now into an association, and the city now appeared as the essential community. And greater mobility, social or economic, led to more socio-economic activity. McIver further says the social mobility which the city affords and the differentiation of interest which it encourages lead man to find other centers for one or other activity. Now, in such circumstances, political order was needed to meet the requirements of these evolving and establishing cities. McIver further writes that the order of the city demands more intensive, more complex, and more continuous regulation. So, concentration of population in cities helped in the origin of the state. In cities, it is found that temple priests, officials armed with forces, currency, and market emerged, and together with these emerged centralized power. There was concentration of wealth, which led to concentration of power. And McIver further states the city implies a concentration of wealth, and through it, the concentration of power. The city is the first condition of an empire. So, the city organizes and elaborates the forms of social control. It tends in earlier time to be state in itself. Thus, from cities emerge city-states, and city-states changes into later on into empire. So, in the Greek civilization, we found that the city-states were partnership in all citizens, in all virtues and activities, and great philosophers. The Plato and Aristotle gave the first compact discourses in political theory, and then the rich experience of city-state is a philosophical and political asset notable for the humanity, but for the origin of the state itself, because these cities and their economic requirements gave birth to empires. McIver further writes that only the settled population of a country, rich enough to permit of the order and the concentration of power involved in the life of a city, can learn the secret of empires. And ancient cities were the hotbed of politics and political discussions. Armies moved from one city-states to another, and wars established the unity of city-states under one or the other victor. Thus emerged big empires and bigger unities in the form of Macedonian Empire or the Roman Empire. In this way, urbanization helped in the evolution of state. Now, class division of society is another factor which has contributed, and the division of society into rulers and the ruled, elders and the juniors, leaders and the followers, masters and subjects, not only in the division of the forms of propertied and propertyless classes, it contributed to the origin of state. Some leaders with a superior ability imposed themselves in the form of a state on the rest of society. McIver further writes that the origins of this class structure are, of course, inherent in the inequality of human conditions. There is authority that accrues to age and experience. There are men honored for their skills or cunning or physical powers. Now, thus, selected fraternities and clique arises, and the natural oligarchies of mankind were formed, and they, because of that special ability, they claim prerogatives and superior rights. Now that strengthens their claim for attaching themselves to the power of growing state, and attacking such states, McIver says, the states become identified with privileged classes. Now, identifying and emphasizing the importance of class in the origin of the state, he further writes that the political order seems always to have been first achieved through a domination of a class, or caste, or a family to which the rest of the community was directed and ostensibly subject. The early state is strictly a class state. This position has been adopted by the theorists of elitism, who maintain that in every age the iron law of oligarchies or elites operates, and elite is the natural ruling class in a given society. However, this view is very different from the Marxian notion of origin of state, which maintains that the state originated because of the class division and class struggle. The concept of class adopted by McIver is much different than that of the Marxian concept of class. Moreover, liberals believe that one class, that is, the leader, elite, or able persons, can rule for the benefit of the whole society, as they have nothing of their own to defend. So, the liberal unscientific notion of class or elite should not be confused with Marxian notion of class, which is quite different from the class which is imagined by the liberals here. Now, race and nationality that have also gone to play a very major and important role in origin of state. Race and later on nationality, it provided a different kind of unity in society. The blood relationship which existed in a family, a narrow social organization, was replaced by a soul unity that is represented by race and nationality. Now, the sense of race or nationality has played the same role in the modern society as kinship did in the primitive societies. McIver writes here saying that by its very nature, nationality is as inclusive as state itself. It belongs to men by nature and regardless of rank or class. Now, in this respect, nationality is like the primitive sense of kinship, and it works on a higher and far more extensive plans as kinship worked in the solidarity of the tribe itself. So, nationality has played a major role in the evolution of modern national states. Now, the feeling of nationality as a psychological force emerged when, as McIver writes, common elements of culture manifested in religion and in forms and common language of learning in the modes and standards of life prevailed over a great area. Now, the concept of country or motherland or fatherland emerged. Now, feudal order was a localized one in which common masses had little role to play with regard to the political power which vested in nobles. That was in medieval period. But the concept of nationality began towards the end of the medieval period. It was a cultural phenomena that does not distinguish between common man and a neighbor and a nobleman. However, as McIver writes, the sense of nationality, which could not develop until men learned their participation in a common life, in the service of which authority was maintained and justified. General masses cooperated with the kings in their fights against the people, and feudal lords for the establishment of national states. Moreover, emergence of a new class, that is the rising middle class, helped in the emergence of national states, because this purpose could be better served with national markets, law and order and justice. So McIver, in the same vein, he further writes that the demarcating influence of the country-state appears very clearly in the policy of mercantilism, which interpreted the economic interest of the country. So the concept of nationality, which implied a better social and spiritual unity, the reason for this is that it contained a claim of equality. For nationality has no degree within its range. It applies to all men rich or poor, high or low. So nationality helped in bringing the much wanted border unity, and with that the broader unity in the society at a time when during the period of Renaissance and Restoration in 16th century, the value of society were coming in the melting pot for refashioning into a new kind of society. So the sense of nationality has a content which was more pervasive and more real than the concept of social unity which preceded its manifestation. Though communal in character, it unites far greater areas of society than ever in the past. So apart from this, based on the feeling of nationalism, various movements against colonialism took place in Asian, African countries in 20th century. Thousands of youth people sacrifice their lives singing Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan Hamara in our own national struggle against colonialism. So, undoubtedly, nationalism has played an important role in the formation of states in the ex colonies of Asia and Africa. The contribution of nationality to the evolution of state can be summarized in the words of MacIver, who says, nationality is the sense of community which under the historical conditions of a particular social epoch has possessed or still seeks expression through the unity of the state. Now, in the line of various factors contributing towards the origin of state, another factor is development of science. Now, technology and science developed and its development contributed a lot to the evolution of secular democratic state in the 17th and 18th century. In the evolution of industrial revolution, in the, in the 18th century, various scientific inventions placed tremendous power in the hand of state and the people. Distribution of power was altered by these inventions, and the basis of power, as a result, extended. The effect of invention, whether it was that of the gunpowder or the printing press, was to alter the distribution of power and, in particular, to extend it more widely. Even new power that men gain over nature, it became a means to liberate a new power within themselves. Now, with the development of science and progressive forces, which these technology advanced, secular states emerged under the leadership of kings and democratic states under the leadership of bourgeoisie class. Now, with new arms developed by science, wars could be waged more easily, extensively, and effectively. Now, because of development of faster means of communication, big territories could be managed very easily. Now, that was not the case now that in medieval period, like in India, the Mughal army, it took months to reach its borders in the South India. Now, with the development of modern arms, the state has acquired more effective physical power. It has bullets now, tear gas, guns, bombs, tanks, aeroplanes, rockets, atom bombs. Now, with the development of printing and new propaganda of techniques, radio, television, newspapers, social media, the state has got better ideological power over the citizens. Somehow, science has served the establishment more than the people, as it seems, and it has provided establishment with better means of control and manipulation. Now, because of the scientific development, industrial development took place, and these required an industrialized uh, state with more extensive area and more important functions to perform. Now, in an industrial society, state becomes absolute essential, especially when industries are run by private enterprises. It has to process the byproduct of industrial systems based on capital like unemployment, a rise in prices, trade, commerce, distribution of essential commodities, regulation of industries, poverty, pollution, quality control, regulation of industrial competition, labor disputes. So, industrial development has given a fabulous role to the state. Moreover, development of disastrous scientific arms like atom bomb, hydrogen bomb, missiles, and biological and chemical weapons, it has made the survival of humanity itself a difficult task. Now, it has compelled men to think of a world which can be which can be eliminated from these weapons of mass destruction. So, If sciences help in the evolution of nation state, it will help further in the evolution of international state. Let's hope so. Now, having talked about all these factors which have contributed in origin evolution of state, let's talk about the conclusion that we can draw from what we have discussed so far. The historical or evolutionary theory of the origin of the state, it has maintained that the state has originated not because of a single factor, but many factors have contributed to its evolution. The state has changed much from ancient to the present time. The liberal theory of the origin of the state does not give specific importance to any one factor in the origin of state. The evolutionary theory gives some recognition to historical entity of the state, but it is now a widely recognized liberal theory of the origin of the state. The study of evolution of the state, as stated by Gettel, leads to 5 broad conclusions. In the case of organizations in journal, the evolution of state has been from the simple to the complex. Government has become more complex and complicated than in earlier times. But at the same time, there has been an increased unity and interdependence of governmental organs. Secondly, the evolution of state has meant the growth of political consciousness and purposeful action. The first state came into being not through the deliberate actions of man, but largely through natural causes. But with the evolution of state and increasing intelligence, man was able to discover reasons for the existence of the state and mold the state according to his ideals. State authority came to be based on more rational and stable foundations. The spread of political consciousness to the people led to the formation of democracies. Then further we found, as a general rule, the evolution of the state has meant the bringing together under a single state system large areas, greater number of people. Among the factors which have made larger states possible today are rapid means of transportation and communication, unprecedented economic development, the growth of self-governing local institutions, and increasing respect of modern man for law and order. Then the state development has meant the curtailment of power of the state in certain areas and the corresponding increase of it in certain other areas. Like the religion and the state evolved together in early stages, but at the present time, in all civilized countries, the church and state tend to be entirely separate. It is generally admitted that state ought not to interfere with such matters as domestic life and personal likes and dislikes as regards food, clothing, fashion, and the like, so long as such freedom is not contrary to public order and safety or law or decency. On the other hand, there is an increasing demand for state action in the sphere of public welfare, where individuals cannot or will not help themselves. Thus, education, sanitation, the care of defective, the punishment and prevention of crime are justified by all modern states. Then further, fifth, we find that in many ways the most significant development has been the increasing measure of compromise which has been worked out between the sovereignty of the state and the individual liberty. Modern totalitarian states are, however, an exception to the rule. Rigid enforcement of customs and despotic rules were necessary in earlier days to make primitive man understand the importance of law and authority. But after this purpose was accomplished, they become rather a hindrance to the individual liberty and the unity of the state. So, with that, I come to the end of my presentation, and what we found that not one number of factors contributed finally to the evolution of state, and the liberal state finally is the one which believes in not just one but contribution of all the factors in its present evolved state. With that, I come to end. Thank you. Thank you for watching.